The message came on a Tuesday. Dr. Alan Carter was alone in the observatory when the signal patterns changed on his screen. At first, he thought it was a glitch. He tapped the monitor and adjusted his glasses. The pattern remained. Alan's heart raced as he ran a series of checks. This was no equipment malfunction. The signal came from somewhere beyond Mars, and it repeated in a clear mathematical sequence. After 20 years of searching the stars, he had found what humanity had always wondered about. We were not alone. He called Dr. Olivia Martinez immediately. As the world's leading linguistic expert, she had worked with him for 5 years on the search for alien life. "I need you here now," was all he said. She understood the importance from his tone. Within 3 hours, government officials filled the small observatory in Colorado. By morning, the president addressed the nation. Earth had received its first alien communication. It took Olivia and her team 2 weeks to crack the basic elements of the message. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Consortium, an alliance of 32 advanced species. They had noticed Earth's radio signals and decided to make contact. They invited Earth to send representatives to their nearest outpost. "This is the greatest moment in human history," the president said in another address. "We will send our best and brightest to meet our cosmic neighbors." Captain John Reed was selected for his calm leadership and scientific background. Susan Wright, a skilled diplomat with experience in difficult negotiations, would accompany him. Together, they would be the first humans to meet alien life. The consortium sent a small ship to collect them. It landed in a field outside of Washington, D.C., shimmering like liquid metal under the sun. John and Susan boarded with simple bags carrying Earth's most important cultural and scientific information. The journey took 12 days in a ship that seemed to bend space itself. John spent his time studying the ship's design while Susan practiced the basic communication patterns Olivia had discovered. When they arrived at the consortium's massive space station, John felt like a child seeing the ocean for the first time. The structure was larger than Manhattan, a spinning wheel of metal and light against the blackness of space. Their amazement quickly faded when they met their hosts. The welcoming party consisted of 5 different alien species. The tallest ones, with purple skin and 4 arms, called themselves Xeraxians. "So the apes have learned to leave their planet," said one Xeraxian in a voice translated by a small device given to John and Susan. "How quaint." Susan stepped forward. "We thank the consortium for their invitation and look forward to peaceful exchange between our worlds." This caused something like laughter among the aliens. "Your world," said the lead Xeraxian, showing them a display of the galaxy. "This tiny dot is your home. Most species in the consortium control dozens of systems. You barely control your moon." John felt his face grow hot, but he remembered his mission. Size isn't everything. Earth has much to offer in terms of culture, art, and scientific thinking. "Primitive culture, simple art, basic science," the Xeraxian replied. "Your ships use chemical combustion. We mastered gravity manipulation 10,000 years ago." Despite the mockery, John and Susan completed the formal grading process. They were assigned small quarters in a distant section of the station and told they would meet the consortium council the next day. That night, in their bare room with its strange lighting and recycled air, Susan looked at John. "They think we're jokes." John nodded as he unpacked their information storage devices. "Then we'll have to show them they're wrong." "How?" "You saw their technology. They're centuries ahead of us." John smiled slightly. "But they lack something we humans have always had." "What's that?" Susan asked. "The ability to surprise everyone who underestimates us." Outside their window, countless stars shined. Somewhere among them was Earth, a tiny blue dot that these advanced aliens laughed at. They didn't know yet what humans were capable of when challenged. They would learn soon enough. 6 months after first contact, Earth had established a small embassy on the consortium station. The room they were given was at the end of a long hallway where few aliens ever walked. The walls were plain and the furniture uncomfortable for human bodies. This was all the space the consortium felt Earth deserved. Ryan Porter arrived as Earth's first official ambassador. He had gray at his temples and a firm handshake. Before this job, he worked in tough places on Earth, talking to people who didn't want to listen. Now he faced the same problem on a much larger scale. "Welcome to your new office," said Susan Wright as she showed him around the tiny space. "It's not much, but it's all we have." Ryan nodded and set down his bag. "I've worked in worse places. At least no one is shooting at me here." "They just talk down to us instead," John Reed added from his desk in the corner. "The consortium gave us observational status. That's their polite way of saying we can watch but not speak at meetings." That afternoon, Ryan attended his first consortium gathering. The room was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human. Others seemed more like plants or fish. Ryan sat in the back row, marked for lower species. A tall Xeraxian named Velton led the meeting. He talked about trade routes and resource sharing between full member worlds. Not once did he look at the observation section where Ryan sat. After the meeting, Ryan introduced himself to a small green being with 4 eyes who had also sat in the back. "I am Krell of the Tellurians," the alien said through a translator. "We too are new to the consortium. They look down on us as well, though not as much as you humans." "Why do they treat us this way?" Ryan asked. "Novium," Krell replied. "The consortium runs on Novium energy. Your world has none. My world has very little. Without Novium, they see us as backward." Ryan made notes about this. Earth scientists would need to study this energy source. Meanwhile, Lisa Bennett worked in what the humans called their tech room. She was the best engineer Earth had sent to the station so far. Today she was fixing the air system in their area, which always seemed to break down. As she worked, she noticed strange patterns in the power flow. The consortium's energy system was wasteful in ways that made no sense to her. They had so much power from this Novium that they didn't care about efficiency. "That's not how we would do it," she muttered as she traced the circuits. Lisa had brought some Earth devices with her. She set up a small system to monitor the station's power grid. The data she collected might help Earth understand alien technology better. A week later, Ryan was talking with Krell again when alarms sounded through the station. The lights flickered 3 times. "What's happening?" Ryan asked. "Power failure in Section 12, Krell said, looking worried. "That section controls air recycling for a quarter of the station." They hurried to the main control room, where consortium engineers were arguing. The Xeraxians seemed especially upset. "The backup systems are not responding," one of them said. "The Novium conduits have overloaded." Ryan called Lisa on his communicator. "Are you seeing this?" "Yes," she replied. "Their system is failing because they rely on only one power source. They have no real backups." Ryan looked at the worried aliens. "Lisa, could you fix this?" "Not with their technology," she said. "But I might have another solution. Give me 20 minutes. 23 minutes later, Lisa arrived at the control room carrying what looked like a modified Earth laptop and some cables. "What is that primitive device?" a Xeraxian engineer asked with disgust. "This primitive device might save your air supply," Lisa replied calmly. "May I connect to your system?" The aliens looked at each other, then reluctantly agreed. Lisa worked quickly, connecting her equipment to their consoles. "Your system failed because it has no true redundancy," she explained as she typed. "Earth systems are designed to work even when things go wrong." Within minutes, her bypass system restored partial power to the air recyclers. The aliens watched in silence as the emergency lights turned green again. "How did you do that without Novium?" the lead engineer asked. Lisa shrugged. "Sometimes the old ways work best." As they left the control room, Ryan smiled at Lisa. "I think we just took our first step toward being taken seriously around here." Lisa nodded. "They may have advanced technology, but they've forgotten something important." "What's that?" how to solve problems without it. 3 months after Lisa's fix saved part of the station, Earth sent its first real starship to join the consortium fleet. The U.S. Defiant wasn't as large or as fast as alien ships, but it was built with human care and creativity. Commander Eric Thompson stood proud on the bridge as they approached the massive space station. "They'll probably laugh at our engines," said his second officer. Eric smiled. "Let them laugh. This ship can do things they might not expect." Dr. Heather Collins, the ship's science officer, spent most of her time in the sensor room. Earth had equipped the Defiant with unique scanning devices based partly on what they had learned from alien technology, but designed with human thinking. On their third day at the station, Heather noticed something strange on the long-range scans. There was a pattern of energy at the edge of the consortium's space that didn't match known phenomena. "Commander, I think you should see this," she called Eric to her station. He studied the readings. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "I'm not sure," she admitted, "but it matches some theoretical models of quantum instability that we were studying back on Earth. The pattern repeats every 6 hours and seems to be getting stronger." Eric reported their findings to the Consortium Science Council. The Zyraxian head of the council, Drac, dismissed their concerns. "Your primitive sensors are clearly malfunctioning," he said. "Our systems detect nothing unusual in that sector." "With respect," Eric replied, "our sensors work differently than yours. They might be picking up something your technology misses." "Impossible," Drac said. "Your ship uses crude materials and basic computing. Our systems are based on pure Novium technology, the most advanced in the galaxy." Eric wanted to argue more, but Ryan Porter, who had joined the meeting, gave him a warning look. They would need more evidence before the consortium would listen. A week later, the pattern Heather detected had grown stronger. Now the Defiant's entire crew could see it on their main screens. It looked like cracks in space itself, glowing with strange purple light. At the same time, a consortium outpost near the anomaly sent a distress signal. Their communications cut off in the middle of the message. The last words they heard were, "They're here. The void is opening." Now the consortium took notice. 3 large ships were sent to investigate. Eric offered to join them, but was told to stay back. "Your little ship would only get in the way," the Zyraxian fleet commander said. The 3 ships reached the outpost 2 days later. Their transmission showed a frightening scene. The outpost was dark and damaged. No life signs appeared on scans. And around the station, space itself seemed to be tearing open. Then from the tiers came ships. They were unlike any vessel the consortium had seen before. They absorbed light rather than reflected it. They moved in ways that defied normal physics. "Harvesters," whispered an old alien in the consortium council room as they watched the transmission. "The void harvesters have returned." The consortium ships fired their weapons. The strange vessels seemed to swallow the energy beams without damage. Then they fired back. One consortium ship exploded immediately. Another lost power and drifted. The third managed to escape and jump back to the station. Panic spread through the consortium. The council called an emergency meeting of all species, even those with observer status. For the first time, humans were invited to sit at the main table. "What are these void harvesters?" Ryan asked the council leader. "Ancient enemies," the leader replied. "They come from spaces between universes. They feed on energy, especially Novium. We thought they were just legends. No one has seen them for 10,000 years." Heather leaned forward. "The quantum patterns we detected. They were signs of the harvesters breaking through. Why didn't your sensors detect them?" Eric asked the Zyraxian scientists. The room grew quiet. Finally, one alien spoke. "Because our technology is based on Novium, and the harvesters can hide from anything powered by the energy they hunt." Ryan looked at Eric and Heather. "But our ship runs on different principles." "Yes," Eric said, understanding immediately. "Our primitive technology might be invisible to these harvesters." For the first time since humans joined the consortium, No one laughed at them. News of the Void Harvesters spread quickly through the consortium station. Aliens rushed about in panic, gathering supplies and sending urgent messages to their homeworlds. In the human section, things were more calm. Earth was far from the danger, at least for now. Dr. Peter Morgan sat in the small lab they had set up in their quarters. He was a physicist who had arrived just 2 weeks ago. Now he studied all the data they had on the harvesters and the novium energy the aliens used. "There's a connection here," he told Ryan Porter. "These harvesters can detect anything powered by novium from great distances. It's like a beacon to them." Ryan nodded. "And almost everything in consortium space runs on novium." "Exactly," Peter said. "But our technology doesn't. We use a mix of solar, nuclear, and other energy sources. The harvesters might not sense our equipment as easily." This insight changed everything. Ryan called a meeting with all the humans on the station. Among them was Amanda Garcia, who had been a military strategist back on Earth. She had studied how smaller forces could defeat larger ones throughout human history. "If what Dr. Morgan says is true," Amanda explained, "then Earth ships could get closer to the harvesters without being detected. We could observe them, maybe even find weaknesses." Eric Thompson nodded. "The Defiant could be refitted with extra sensors and weapons that don't use novium energy." Lisa Bennett had been working on the station's systems for months now. "I think we could also create shields for some consortium ships using our principles. It wouldn't be perfect, but it might hide them a little from the harvesters." As they made plans, the door to their meeting room slid open. Velton, the lead Xeraxian, stood there with 5 other high-ranking consortium members. Everyone fell silent. "We need to speak with you," Velton said, his normal arrogance gone from his voice. Ryan stood. "Of course. Please come in." The aliens entered and took seats around the table. They looked uncomfortable in the human design chairs. "3 more outposts have gone silent," Velton said. "The harvesters are moving faster than we expected. Our weapons have little effect on them." "We have studied your historical files," added another alien. "Humans have fought many wars against superior forces. Sometimes you have won." Ryan tried not to show his surprise at this admission. "We have always been adaptable." "The Consortium Council has voted," Velton said. "We formally request Earth's assistance in the fight against the Void Harvesters." The room was silent for a moment. The humans exchanged glances. After months of being mocked and dismissed, now the mighty consortium was asking for their help. "We are willing to help," Ryan said carefully, "but we would need certain assurances." "What assurances?" Velton asked, a hint of his old tone returning. Ryan stood straight. "Full membership in the consortium, access to all technical information, and respect for our people and methods." The aliens whispered among themselves. Finally, Velton nodded. "The Council agrees to these terms. Earth will be granted full membership status immediately." "There's one more thing," Ryan added. "We're not just doing this for status. If these harvesters keep spreading, they'll eventually reach Earth too. We're fighting for our survival, just like you." That evening, messages went out to Earth. More ships would be needed, more scientists, more soldiers. Humanity was about to fight its first interstellar war. Peter Morgan continued his research late into the night. The harvester's weakness had to be there somewhere. Every life form, every machine had a flaw. It was just a matter of finding it. "Earth was lucky," he said to himself as he worked. "Lucky that we never found novium. Lucky that we had to develop our own ways." Outside the station, the stars seemed dimmer now. Somewhere out there, the ancient harvesters were coming closer, and Earth's primitive technology had suddenly become the most valuable resource in the galaxy. 1 month after Earth received full membership in the consortium, a fleet of human ships arrived at the station. They were smaller than alien vessels and looked rougher on the outside. The aliens still whispered about how basic they appeared, but no one laughed anymore. Captain Laura Mitchell commanded the lead ship, the U.S. Guardian. She had fought in conflicts on Earth and was known for finding solutions when none seemed possible. Her second-in-command, Daniel White was a technical expert who had worked with Lisa Bennett to create special shields against the harvesters. "Your ships are ready for battle?" Velton asked during the first joint planning meeting. Laura nodded. "We've modified our weapons and shields based on what we've learned. Our vessels don't use novium, so the harvesters should have a harder time detecting us." The consortium had lost 12 outposts already. The harvesters were moving toward a large colony world called Paraxis. Over 3 million aliens lived there, and it needed to be protected. "We will send 20 consortium ships to defend Paraxis," the fleet commander said. "How many Earth vessels will join us?" 8, Laura replied. Some aliens muttered at the small number, but Laura continued. "Our ships will form the front line. Yours will stay back until needed. You expect us to let your tiny fleet lead the defense?" the fleet commander asked in surprise. Daniel White spoke up. "Your ships are bigger and more powerful than ours, but they shine like beacons to the harvesters. Our ships are nearly invisible to them. We need to use that advantage." After much debate, the aliens agreed to the plan. The combined fleet left the next day for Paraxis. They arrived just as the first harvester ships appeared at the edge of the system. Laura's voice was calm as she gave orders. "All Earth vessels, move to intercept. Consortium ships, hold position behind the moon." The 8 human ships moved forward. Daniel's shields were working. The harvester vessels didn't change course to attack them. They seemed unaware of the human fleet. "Weapons ready," Laura commanded. "Target their propulsion systems." When the Earth ships were in range, they fired. Their weapons were simple compared to consortium technology. Solid projectiles and energy beams rather than novium disruptors. But against the harvesters, they worked better. The first harvester ship spun as it was hit. The others turned toward the human fleet, finally sensing them. "They've spotted us," Daniel reported, "but they seemed confused by our energy signature." The battle was fierce. 2 Earth ships were badly damaged, but the humans fought with skill born from centuries of conflict on their own world. They maneuvered in ways the aliens had never seen, drawing the harvesters into traps. When the largest harvester vessel broke through toward Paraxis, Laura gave the signal. "Consortium fleet now." The consortium ships rose from behind the moon. They fired their powerful weapons while the harvesters were distracted by the humans. The combined attack worked. The large harvester ship exploded in a flash of strange dark energy. The remaining harvesters retreated, something the consortium had never seen them do before. On the Guardian's bridge, Laura allowed herself a small smile. "Damage report. 2 of our ships need major repairs," Daniel said, "but all crews are safe. We lost no vessels." When they returned to Paraxis, the aliens welcomed them with a ceremony. The colony leader, a tall blue being, bowed to Laura. "We had heard that humans were primitive warriors," the leader said. "Now we see that makes you valuable allies. You fight in ways we have forgotten." Velton approached Laura after the ceremony. His 4 arms were held in a position of respect. "The harvesters have never been driven back before," he said. "This is the first real victory against them in recorded history." Laura nodded. "It's just the beginning. We'll need to share more of our primitive ideas if we want to win this war." Word of the victory spread quickly through consortium space. Suddenly, humans were not seen as backward creatures from a tiny planet. They were seen as warriors, protectors, and maybe even saviors. More Earth ships were already on their way. After the victory at Paraxis, the consortium opened its vast knowledge database to Earth scientists. For the first time, humans could see the full extent of alien technology. What they found surprised them. Kyle Newman sat in the main data room, his eyes tired from reading screen after screen of technical information. As a systems analyst, he had been tasked with finding patterns in consortium technological development. "This can't be right," he said to himself. He checked the dates again on the alien calendar. Then he called Dr. Michelle Adams, who had joined the station's research team a week earlier. "Look at these development timelines." Kyle showed her. "The consortium's technology hasn't truly advanced in over 300 years. They'd just been making more powerful versions of the same Novium systems. Michelle studied the data. You're right. They found something that worked and stopped looking for alternatives. They became dependent on a single resource. This discovery changed how Earth approached the war. Rather than just copying alien technology, humans began combining their own innovations with consortium systems. The result was something entirely new. Michelle led a team working on what they called a hybrid power system. It used small amounts of Novium, but masked its energy signature with Earth-based technologies. If it worked, it would allow consortium ships to operate without attracting the harvesters. In the main lab, tensions were high. Many aliens still doubted that humans could improve their systems. A Xeraxian engineer watched over Michelle's shoulder, his forearms crossed. "Your approach is flawed," he said as she adjusted a power coupling. "Novium cannot be masked." Michelle didn't look up from her work. "On Earth, we have animals that hide their scent from predators. We're doing the same thing, just with energy signatures." After 3 days of non-stop work, Michelle's team was ready to test their system. They installed it in a small probe and launched it toward an area where harvester activity had been detected. Everyone gathered in the control room to watch. The probe's signal was clear on their screens as it moved through space. When it entered harvester territory, they waited for it to be attacked. 1 minute passed, then 5, then an hour. "The harvesters aren't detecting it," Kyle said, checking the data again. "The masking system works." The aliens began talking all at once. This changed everything. If they could hide their Novium signature, their ships could fight back without being targeted immediately. That night, there was a formal meeting of the Consortium Council. The main chamber was filled with representatives from all member species. Ryan Porter sat in the Earth section, which was no longer in the back of the room. The head of the council, a wise old alien with silver skin, addressed the gathering. "Today marks a turning point in our war against the Void Harvesters. Thanks to Earth's innovative thinking, we have a new way to fight." Then something happened that would have been unimaginable just months before. Velton, the Xeraxian who had once mocked humans for their primitive technology, stood and walked to the center of the room. "On behalf of the Xeraxian Union, I formally apologize to the people of Earth," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "We judged you by our standards and failed to see your true value. Your different ways of thinking may save us all." Ryan accepted the apology with a simple nod. The time for grudges was past. The war was still far from over. Plans were made to create a massive defensive station using Earth's principles. It would serve as a base for the combined fleet and a testing ground for new hybrid technologies. As Kyle and Michelle walked back to the human section, they passed a group of young aliens from different species. The aliens were studying an Earth history book, reading about human wars and innovations. "They're learning from us now," Kyle said. Michelle smiled. "And we're learning from them. That's how progress happens, not by one way being better than another, but by bringing different ideas together." Outside the station windows, distant stars shone. Somewhere out there, the harvesters were regrouping. But for the first time, the consortium had real hope of victory. 6 months after Michelle's breakthrough, the war with the Void Harvesters reached its climax. The massive defense station, named Unity, was complete. Built with a combination of Earth design and consortium materials, it stood as a symbol of what their different species could achieve together. Admiral Brandon Clark commanded the combined fleet from Unity's control center. He had gray hair and a face lined with experience from many Earth conflicts. Now he faced his greatest challenge. "Harvester forces are gathering near the Proxys sector," reported Nicole Taylor, his strategic advisor. Her skills at predicting enemy movements had saved countless lives in previous battles. Brandon studied the large display showing positions of all known harvester ships. "They're planning something big. They've never grouped their forces like this before." Nicole nodded. "I think they've learned they can't win by attacking outposts one by one. This looks like a direct assault on the central consortium worlds." The combined human-alien fleet took positions around Unity Station. 200 consortium ships now carried the hybrid shields that made them harder for harvesters to detect. 50 Earth vessels formed the front line, their primitive weapons upgraded with consortium materials. Brandon sent a message to all ships. Today we defend not just the consortium, but the future of all our peoples. Earth stands with you. The harvester fleet appeared 3 hours later. There were more of them than anyone had expected. Their dark ships seemed to consume the starlight around them as they approached. All ships, engage as planned, Brandon ordered. The battle was unlike anything seen before in the galaxy. Earth ships darted between the larger alien vessels, drawing harvester fire and creating openings for consortium weapons. The hybrid shields worked, but the harvesters were adapting. On Unity Station, Michelle and her team worked frantically. "They're learning to see through our masking technology," she reported to Brandon. "We need a new approach." Brandon turned to Nicole. "What options do we have?" Nicole had been studying harvester behavior since the war began. "They communicate using quantum fields. If we could disrupt those fields, they might lose coordination." Michelle's eyes widened. "Like an EMP, but for quantum states. We could modify the station's main power core to create a massive pulse." "Would it affect our ships too?" Brandon asked. "Yes," Michelle admitted, "but we could shield the Earth vessels. Their simpler systems would recover faster than the harvesters." It was a desperate plan, but they had no choice. The harvesters had broken through the outer defense lines. 24 consortium ships were already lost. While Michelle's team prepared the pulse device, Brandon ordered all Earth ships to fall back to the station for special shielding. The consortium vessels would make one last attack, then retreat beyond the pulse range. As the Earth ships docked, the situation grew worse. The harvesters destroyed 3 more consortium vessels. Unity Station itself came under attack, shaking with each hit. "Pulse device ready," Michelle reported. Her face was covered in sweat, but her hands were steady. Brandon gave the order to the remaining consortium ships. "Fall back now. We're activating the pulse." The alien vessels turned and fled at top speed. Some didn't make it. The harvesters seemed to sense victory, pressing their attack harder. "Now," Brandon said quietly. Michelle activated the device. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a wave of invisible energy spread out from the station. It passed through everything in its path. As planned, the Earth ships recovered first, their systems rebooting within minutes. The view screens came back online to show an amazing sight. The harvester vessels drifted aimlessly, their quantum fields disrupted. "All ships, attack now," Brandon ordered. The Earth fleet moved in, targeting the helpless harvesters. Without their coordination, the dark ships were easy targets. One by one, they were destroyed. When it was over, Brandon stood in the main hall of Unity Station. Representatives of all consortium species gathered to thank him and the people of Earth. The head of the Consortium Council approached with a special medallion. "Earth is hereby elevated to the High Council. Your wisdom has saved us all." Brandon accepted it with a nod. "We came as strangers to your galaxy. You laughed at our simple ways. But in the end, it was our different perspective that made the difference." Outside the station, repair ships were already at work. The war had been costly, but a new era was beginning. Earth was no longer seen as a tiny backward planet. It was now recognized as home to one of the most innovative and determined species in the galaxy. Humans had earned their place among the stars.